Apple built a cult. Facebook built an empire. Google built a verb. But none of it happened without one thing: people. The right hires made these companies global giants. The wrong ones? Expensive detours. Now zoom in to your world. You're not sitting on billions or backed by venture capital. You're hiring your first intern, testing your first manager, wondering if being nice is a liability or your superpower. In this episode, 12 small business owners break it down. No theory, no fluff. What to look for, what to skip. How to lead without becoming a caricature. And how to build something real without selling your soul. Let's get into it.
Even the most successful companies don't always get hiring right. With so much money invested in recruiting and onboarding new talent, avoiding costly mistakes is crucial. So, what are some of the mistakes made when hiring? We ask the experts.
1.
Definitely a couple of mistakes. I would say the first one is not having a good construct in terms of how to evaluate talent. Early on, I would just look for function. Can they do the job that we want them to do? But I wouldn't necessarily look for the other two things that we really score our candidates on now, which is fit and fire. And so fit would be the cultural fit. Fire is, do they have the fire in their belly to get the job done and go above and beyond and really press the business forward? And then function is, can they functionally do it? And early on, when we were growing fairly fast and I was doing everything, just if someone had the function, I had like, pull them on board, right? And then, that didn't always work out, because if the fit wasn't right, then we would end up butting heads just from the way that we saw the world, or if I didn't feel like they really had the fire in them to push forward, I would feel like, well, we're a startup, we gotta go, why aren't you pressing? And they might want, well, I want more work-life balance, I want this and that. And we try to drive a really great culture from that perspective. But sometimes you just have to push, especially when you're doing a startup.
2.
The biggest mistake that I've made when I've hired people is I hire based on, oh my gosh, they've done the exact same thing that we're looking for. Sure, you know what? That's perfect. We don't really need to train them very much. And that was a big mistake, because number one, just because they've done that job before, they did it for a different company. They didn't do it for you. And you may have different practices and procedures and different ways of doing things other than how their other company did. So it's hard to unteach people things sometimes. But moreover, the biggest thing is not hiring on attitude and hiring for, you were in that position, so okay, great. It's not plug and play. And once, as a company, we learned to hire people based on their attitude, that changed everything about the people that we were bringing in to work with us. Because you cannot teach attitude. You could not, it's not something that you can say, here you go, we want you to be this. They are who they are. You can't change it. And I think once you start hiring for that and knowing what the culture is within your company and hiring to that, it just makes everything kind of fall into place.
3.
The first thing in hiring is getting extremely clear on what and who you want to hire. In other words, what is actually what you want them to accomplish? Because that is the number one mistake I see people making in hiring. They're not really clear about the job role, and they're not really clear about who is supposed to fit that job role. What is the personality type? What is the capability type of that person that is supposed to fit that role? And so if we start with missing that, well, we're in trouble. The next step of that would be, once you attract the right person, you want to create structured interviews. One being a very short interview to test are they the person in the ad? And the second interview to actually go deeper into that whole process. Structured interviews with the same questions for everybody. And then what you do is you score these questions. And then the final component of that is you want to take assessments that are appropriate. So if you want to test for personality, you use a personality assessment. If you want to test for ability, you use an assessment for the ability. So once you put all of that together and you score all of this equally, you will have a much better hire.
4.
we're all potentially at risk of hiring people that make us feel good in the interview and not necessarily hiring people based on a measurable sort of set of scorecard attributes. And so early on, when I first started the company, I knew I needed somebody to do X, but I hadn't really spent any time putting together what their role, responsibility, and key attributes were. I just, same thing our clients tell us when we do, like, I don't have time. I didn't have time. And, we did have one misfire from a hire that just kind of came from me saying, I need this person. Their resume says they've got it, and I like her a lot. So we're just going to go ahead and move forward with that person. But the truth is that if I would have built a scorecard and I would have built a structured interview process and I would have actually put this person through their paces, it would have been clear that she wasn't capable of all the things I was hoping that she would be able to do.
5,
Being an entrepreneur is full of mistakes, and it's about getting up, dusting yourself off, and keep moving. I believe and teach about making mistakes quickly. The faster you can make that mistake, the better you can do it. So mistakes are not foreign. We're all going to make mistakes. But when we're talking about one particular instance, there's been many. But I've definitely done things like hire too fast. I've hired for the position. I've hired non-qualified individuals because I didn't check their background enough, because I need the work quickly. I've hired people who were germs in the organization. That is, they didn't fit into the culture. And so you have to fail quickly. Once you realize who these individuals are, you respectfully shake their hand and say, this is not the right fit for us. Sorry. We're in the state of California. It's a no-fault state. We're able to do just that.
6,
I have a very bad habit of seeing someone in need and wanting to give them a job, whether or not they're qualified. In fact, I did it, just the other day. I was scrolling on Facebook and I saw somebody post, that they were looking for part-time work and that they were desperate. They'd been out of work for like a year since they got laid off. And my initial gut reaction is, I'll give you a job. And I have no idea what this person's skills are, right? And I think that, that has gotten me in trouble in the past because I've met people and I've thought, this person has no idea what my business does. They don't know how to do it, but I can train them. And that was not the case. Are people trainable? Absolutely. And right now, I'm in the process of training someone to do some of the things that I do so she can help take some things off of my plate. But she's very open and receptive and great at understanding concepts and applying them. Whereas, there's been a couple people that I hired that I thought that I could train that I really could not. So I have developed a little bit more of a robust screening process to really get down to what people are comfortable with and how they learn things. I think where we've gotten with hiring in the corporate world with 6-7 interviews and doing these big projects for free and all that, that's a little bit crazy. But I have extended the questions that I ask people and just the insights that I'm able to gain in an interview to hopefully determine if they're a better fit.
But let's be real, while patience can be tested and tempers might flare, being a jerk isn't the best strategy for long-term success. And building a positive work environment is better in the long run. So, what is the strategy to avoid being a jerk in your own team? We ask the experts.
1,
When you're leading someone other than yourself, when you have a team and things don't go well, it could be really easy to kind of take it out on that team. And I think the thing we have to remember is that we are leaders, and true leaders don't shift blame. I mean, if there is something that happened and you need to have a conversation about it, do that, but not from a place of blame or shame, from a place of compassion and understanding. So yeah, things are going to go wrong in our businesses. I firmly believe that is inevitable. But at the end of the day, if you want a great team around you, You have got to treat the team you have with respect and compassion. They may not be the team that's with you forever, but they're going to be the people that get you prepped for the team that's coming along. And how you do one thing is how you do anything. So if you're currently with a super small team and you're not treating them well and you're taking your stress out on them and you're, saying things you regret later, that's not going to change when you get a bigger team. So start practicing now. Who is the kind of leader that you want to be? How do you want your team to remember you? How do you want them to speak about you when you're not around? You get to control all of that, and it comes with you deciding the kind of leader you want to be and showing up as that every single day in your business.
Q.
If I say something to you, would I want you to say the same thing to me? Would I be comfortable if you said that to me out of the blue or whatever? So I'm a believer in, try to think, especially when working with human beings and people. Today's world is very, very, words mean a lot in today's world. And they always meant something, right? But in today's world, you have to make sure when you talk to somebody or speak to somebody that you basically have a normal relationship where you can say something intelligently and not offend them, the client, or anyone. So I just think overall, when the pressure's on, yeah, you can get short with answers. There's no question. But you have to surround yourself with people that they don't want to hear that every day of the week. But when things are stressful at certain points, they got to be able to appreciate it also, because it's going to come down to them anyways. I mean, in the end of the day, my employee partners are going to be where we're going with this work I need done. So, the stress of cash flow can create a bad scene where you're uncomfortable. The stress of, losing a customer can create a bad scene. There's a lot of things that trigger things. And listen, as a small medium-sized business owner for all my life, I understand one thing. Cash flow is king. And when cash flow tightens up, your back goes out, your stress goes way up for no reason except for you don't have the money to make this payment, or got payroll today, or whatever. Or you're supposed to go on vacation and you can't really go the way you wanted to go because you had to put $2,000 into the business. So, you just got to make sure that when this is, and it will occur, so no sense not thinking it's going to occur, there will be stressful moments in landing a client, losing a client, keeping a client, same with employees. So you want to make sure that you are, in my opinion, you want to be thought-provoked, and you want to be always thinking that if I was on the other side of this conversation, is it okay? And then when you do get short with somebody, just be as professional as possible. It's professional. You're a professional. So you want to be professional, and you want them to be professional, because they're the ones that are going to end up talking to your clients also.
Tree.
I'm not sure that anyone in my world would say that patience is one of my key attributes. Oftentimes, if I am feeling frustrated in the workplace, I loved what you said about the madness starts. I'm not sure, does the madness ever end when you start your own company? Isn't it like a constant state of madness? But when I find myself getting frustrated or maybe feeling impatient, I remind myself that we're all human. No one in this situation is perfect. It's really important to understand context, because oftentimes people assume the lack of patience happens when people are moving quickly. And oftentimes people might be moving too fast and then become impatient about what's happening. So it's like a vicious cycle, So I think taking a deep breath is really important. Understanding context, being curious and asking questions, and making sure you're not making any assumptions. Because oftentimes people will react based on feeling, and people respond based on thought. So oftentimes in the workplace, when things go awry and emotions are high, and you're feeling impatient about something, a person might become reactive. They might get upset. They might scream in the workplace. They might throw stuff. I mean, I've seen it all, let's be clear. You don't want to be reactive in the workplace. You always want to be responsive. So the minute you're feeling these feelings, like I'm frustrated, I'm impatient, take a deep breath, understand what you're thinking, and then clarify with some questions. And you'll be living much more in a responsive mindset than a reactive mindset.
2.
I would say there are maybe 3 keys to that. And look, we're all works in progress. We're trying to get it right. One of the things is around operations. There are certain things I'm great at and there are certain things I'm not so great at. So yes, my name is in the title of the business. When people enroll with us, they're going to get some of me, but no, I can't do it all, and nor do I. And there are certain things that if I'm not the best suited for that, whether it's being the project manager, driving. I'm great at creative. I'm great at strategy. I'm great at setting a vision to tell a brand story. But there might be others on the team who are better at, day in, day out. Here are the things we need to do to reach our milestone. And there are milestones leading up to the main milestone. So I don't do it all. I make sure that I'm putting the right person in the right seat to do those things that I shouldn't do because they might be better suited. So really understanding your own strengths and weaknesses and finding trusted partners who can handle those things and fill up those deficits. That's number one. I think that one of the things that I'm learning is that when I'm rested, I'm a better professional for myself and for anybody around me. And in our industry, I think sometimes we treat this sort of, I'm working all the time, wheels up, it's an all-nighter, I'm doing so much. We treat that kind of as a badge and maybe we shouldn't. I know when I was coming up in this industry, that was absolutely something. I'm working so hard, and show me the proof of I'm working so hard, all the hours I'm putting in. I don't believe in that, really. You can work hard, but are you working smart? And that means, of course, having the right resources around you, whether they be human or otherwise. It also means, are you taking care of yourself in the right way? And so one of the things, even though in entrepreneurship, you'll never work as hard as you do when you're working for yourself. But I think in entrepreneurship, what I have found is a sense of work-life integration, space for rest and self-care. And I have seen that has showed up in my business in very positive ways. So it helps me not come to situations stressed, with a short temper, cranky, all of which is unpleasant for folks to be around. I find that resting has helped and that self-care piece has helped, and encouraging others to do the same, frankly. And then the last thing I've learned is, sometimes we can listen more than we speak. Really being an active listener and getting to the heart of what's needed is a great way to make sure that you're bringing the most well-rounded thinking, but frankly, efficiency to a situation. Sometimes people are not asking for the sun, the moon, and the stars. They might be asking for the moon and the stars. But if we're listening carefully, we can really diagnose very quickly and effectively what we want and what we can deliver. I found that, and maybe this is the market we're in post 2019, I found that sometimes all of the things we would throw at folks at the big agencies, things that cost a lot of dollars, things that needed a lot of manpower, sometimes the client is really happy with a fewer, better, best strategy. Sometimes the client is like, could we hit me with the headlines, give me my core team that won't change, that I can work with towards this goal. That's going to be better than throwing 20 people in a brainstorm at me. And I've learned to listen really carefully, so what's at the heart, so then I could build the experience that's going to be the most impactful.
With up to a 50% failure rate in new hires, it's clear that hiring mistakes are one of the most expensive headaches any business can face. So, when it comes to hiring, what should be avoided? We ask the experts.
1.
Hiring people that I knew well, I think that is a double-edged sword. It can work really well because you know this person, you've worked with them, you know what they're like, and you kind of bring them into the fold. But you have to set expectations with them that, they have to meet company goals, that you're actually their manager, even if you were kind of co-workers before. And so you have to be able to establish that hierarchy. And that can be a bit difficult, especially for someone like me who's very team-oriented and I have less of a top-down approach. And so, bringing in friends or former colleagues, making sure that they're going to be right for the organization is something that I do very carefully now. And will put them through the same interview process that I might anyone else.
2.
When it comes to hiring, it's a long-term decision. So you really want to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, because it's a long-term decision. If you bring in the wrong person, they can create a cancer inside your business. They can create a cancer inside your clients. They can screw up accounts. They can have poor service, things like that. But going back to my kids, I have 4 kids and 2 of them are in my businesses. The good thing is they're separate of what I do. So I try to give them their own business, meaning give. They earn their own business. They bought in. But the reality is that we keep it where there's a line so they can run their business and make their own money, and so can my wife and I. And my wife's a teacher full time, but she's 50% owner in every business and supported me all the way through. Was very active in the first business the first year, but with 4 little kids, it was the best decision for her to be at home. Going to hiring though, you cannot take it lightly. Sometimes you're very busy. You need somebody to do something. They look like they're good. You should be calling the references. You should be following up with interviews. You should look at their Facebook in today's world and see what you're bringing on. You should be doing all of this to make sure that the candidate you bring on is a long-term employee, because you're going to spend an awful lot of money, whether you realize it or not, training this individual or individuals. So you might as well make sure you have the right candidate to train. What's their long-term objective? What are they going to do to add value for you? And remember, when you hire someone, it's not just hire and forget. You now have another job. You have to hire, and you have to manage, and you have to train, and it's ongoing. Now, when you bring in good employees, which sometimes takes 3 or 4 to get a good one, it depends on the economy, it depends on a lot of things. But I will tell you, when you get a good employee and they fit your culture, remember, your business is your culture. It's a reflection of you. But if you want to have a Trader Joe's culture, you want to have a Starbucks culture, you want to have a culture that when you look in the mirror, it reflects your principles and what you want to do. Me, I'm a very hard worker. I like to get things done. I'm very progressive. I like day to day. Let's grow in categories we have to. So just remember, when you bring somebody on, you are going to have another job, making sure that they're doing the right thing for you. And if you need 20 or 30 or 40 of them, it's a full-time, that's 2 or 3 a month. That's a lot of work in finding, interviewing, training, keeping, exit. People do exit. You got to be real. I mean, most industries have a 10 to 20%, at least 20 to 30% turnover. Now, turnover kills you. Turnover is expensive. You can never minimize turnover. It's very, very expensive when people turn over. So make sure you bring on the right people. There's other books out there, like the book I mentioned earlier. It's from the 90s. It's old, but it's perfect. The Great Game of Business. I followed that to a T. We shared the profits with every employee in the company. We had 39 employees. I still have employees with me for 30 plus years. They know me better than I know me. I trust them 100%. And they do things, and I see it when the client sees it. So it's kind of good. So my job's easier. Their job's a lot easier. They don't have to listen to me. And, I just throw out some ideas via text or email, and next thing I know, it's in the air.
3.
Hiring is so important, and getting it right is so important. I have made mistakes when I hire too quickly. Never fall in love with any candidate is what I often say. People, you can have a very good rapport and you're like, this person's perfect for this job. And you kind of overlook some potential red flags because you're moving quickly and you're like, I want to hire this person. And I'm not going to follow the hiring process, even though we've mapped out a rigorous process of what it means to hire someone. I like someone, let's hire them now. Anytime I have broken away from the process, anytime I've hired in haste, it hasn't been great. So I would suggest to people always make sure you have a rigorous hiring process and then stick to it. Make sure you have a rubric that you're assessing the role against. Make sure the job description is really clear. Make sure that the resumes and the cover letters you get are really well done, and just adhere to the process. The other piece of advice I often give to clients, and I embrace myself at Trepwise, oftentimes, whenever you're interviewing for a job, there are 2 dimensions to that interviewing process. The first dimension is about skill. The second dimension is about fit. I remember not getting jobs in my youth and wondering, I could do that job, but why? That's so weird that I wouldn't get that job. And then I began to realize as I mature or age along my career path, there are many people who are qualified and many people have the skills, but they might not necessarily be the right fit for the culture. And I often say skills are important, but skills also can be taught. Fit for the culture is very binary. Either you're going to be a fit or you're not going to be a fit. I have seen people minimize the idea of being a fit and just prioritize skills and it not working out. If I were forced to choose, I would say, you know what? I want someone who's going to fit into this culture. I want someone who's going to, when they join an organization, they join a system that's called culture, I want the culture to be strengthened by their presence. Yes, I want them to have skills as well, but if I'm going to prioritize, I would prioritize fit over skills because I think skills can be taught.
4.
The thing I would avoid is taking any shortcuts. And what I mean by that is the rigor and discipline that maybe you were treated with when you were on the other end of a job interview process, checking references, depending on the role, checking work samples or portfolios. I would not give short shrift to any of that. I think that as entrepreneurs, sometimes because our needs are very acute, we need somebody right away. When we find somebody who looks like the right thing, let's get it done. Let's test and learn it. Let's do it. I think all too often, especially if we're fortunate, as I have been, to have a really stellar network of folks who work in the industry, I want to hire my friend. And I've been able to do that. But I think that I have always sort of taken a step back, even if this is someone I know very well. I've taken a step back to really look at what is the brief for this assignment against their experience. I will ask for a reference. I will check portfolio. I'll check work that maybe has happened since last we connected. I think it's important to give it rigor and discipline. The hire is so important to your organization. And in a small business, it can really make or break, because all the time you spend onboarding, enrolling, making sure somebody is really comfortable so that they can do the best job they do, it's time away from something else. You don't have a ton of resources. So it's really important to invest the time in getting it right so that you don't find yourself in hiring mode 3 months later, 6 months later. It's really important to treat it with that rigor and discipline. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we might fast track that a little bit, or at least that's been my experience. And I've talked to colleagues, and some of them have reported the same thing to me.
5.
When you hire someone, you need to make sure you know how you're going to make that person be successful within your organization. So make sure you're clear about what your training and mentoring strategy is. So when they come on board, they're immediately embraced with the right people around them to help them to be successful. One of the things we've done with for example, our entry-level developers is they now actually join our architecture team so they can be surrounded by staff developers who can help them learn best practices before they move on to another team. Another thing that's kind of along the same lines is we've struggled definitely with hiring unique positions, new positions we've never had before. So making sure you have a clear understanding of what that position's objectives are, communicating that, and then helping that person through constant feedback to be successful is key. So, it's not just about the hiring and recruiting process. It's how do you make them successful after they've joined has to be part of that equation. I guess introspection or reflection is really key. So, for me personally, constantly evaluating the organizational needs, that's what I'm really good at, and seeing where some of the problems lie so that you can then say, hey, this is something that's affecting our business, is affecting our productivity, is affecting our employees' job satisfaction. We need to do something about this to make that problem go away. Whether it's automation or changing our policies, whatever that thing we can do and change, being intentional about periodically stepping back, looking at where you are, getting feedback from others of where your problems are, and then making an intentional effort to actually fix those problems. Otherwise, you're just constantly plowing forward, and you're struggling and not really being able to empower people to do what they want to do, the things they were hired to do. And so that's, for me, that would be my biggest takeaway, is taking the time to do reflection, identify the problems, and then intentionally try to go about fixing them one at a time. And that, over time, leads to tremendous success.
6.
The first thing in hiring is getting extremely clear on what and who you want to hire. In other words, what is actually what you want them to accomplish? Because that is the number one mistake I see people making in hiring. They're not really clear about the job role, and they're not really clear about who is supposed to fit that job role. What is the personality type? What is the capability type of that person that is supposed to fit that role? And so if we start with missing that, well, we're in trouble. The next step of that would be, once you attract the right person, you want to create structured interviews. One being a very short interview to test are they the person in the ad? And the second interview to actually go deeper into that whole process. Structured interviews with the same questions for everybody. And then what you do is you score these questions. And then the final component of that is you want to take assessments that are appropriate. So if you want to test for personality, you use a personality assessment. If you want to test for ability, you use an assessment for the ability. So once you put all of that together and you score all of this equally, you will have a much better hire.
7.
As a small business owner for my marketing agency, not having a lot of budget and trying to get the lowest possible cost, I chose to hire on my own in the Philippines. And that took me, I think my first hire took me 3 months. Also, I'm a very picky guy because you would post a job on a website, literally hundreds, over 100 applicants, sometimes 200 applicants would apply for one job. And I would have to invest my time into seeing and figuring out who's good, who should I interview, who shouldn't I interview, and then once I interview someone, what else do I need to ask them to make sure that they're the right fit? And of course, I knew in the end I was going to hire them directly to avoid working through an agency. That was somehow the right thing for me to do at the time, which made me realize how much time I invested, and I learned on my own actually how to hire because I didn't have anybody else do it for me. So that was good because that's how I learned, and I was able to kind of then recreate that same process but for the agency, for basically doing the same but now for our clients. So when I started Virtual Latinos, I did the exact same thing, which was also not very smart. I copied the business model of the Philippines website for posting jobs, and I would allow people to post jobs and hire on their own as opposed to an agency. And so in the end, I realized that I was spending most of my time helping people how to write job posts, how to interview people, what questions to ask. And I realized, I guess people really do need a lot of help, and they don't want just to hire on their own, which is obviously why they're agencies, but it didn't occur to me. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to just offer the agency model. Now I'm going to do it all for them, which is obviously more work. But I think that, yes, people are looking, in our case, when you're trying to outsource to get a better and more affordable price, but you don't necessarily always need or want the lowest price because your time is very valuable. And I can tell you today, both my time is more and more valuable because I'm more busy doing more things. And we see that our clients' time is obviously very valuable. So even though they need something affordable, they also don't want to do it on their own. And they're willing to basically pay a small premium to be able to have someone do it for them. So that's something that I learned now. And as I continue to grow, because I've always been very price sensitive and I always want to get the best possible price, now I learned it's better to pay a little more, save your time. That's really important so that the business owners can focus on their business. And, that was kind of what I was preaching to my clients that were in the marketing agency. Hey, don't do it all. I'll help you, right? But it's hard to get into that mindset when you're an entrepreneur, initially when you're a very small business. So I guess the tip is, sometimes it's okay to pay up a little more and get help.
The Best of Business Show is brought to you by the BASA Awards. The BASA Awards exist to recognize, reward, and promote exceptional small businesses. We run 4 award programs: Best of America, Best of Australia, Best of Canada, Best of UK. Remember, it's strictly for small businesses only. Nominate your business today.